Hi, this is Hank reporting from Kyiv, and this is my update on Russian-Ukrainian war. Let's see what happened around Ukraine in the last 24 hours.
Security guarantees for Ukraine. 1.5 billion euro monthly aid to Ukraine. Map of Russian assets in Ukraine. Occupiers are building drama theater. Field efforts of the year. Air raid summary. Record Russian losses. On the occasion of the 30th anniversary of the signing of the Budapest Memorandum, which will be on December 5, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine made a statement. The intro reads as follows, quote, "The memorandum was supposed to become a significant step in strengthening global nuclear disarmament and serve as an example for other states to renounce nuclear weapons, but it could not prevent the aggression of the Russian Federation as a state processing nuclear weapons against Ukraine as a state that has renounced its nuclear arsenal." The Ministry of Foreign Affairs calls the Budapest Memorandum a monument to short-sightedness in making strategic decisions on security and notes that the development of the European security architecture at the expense of Ukraine's interests, rather than taking them into account, is doomed to failure. In general, we did not hear anything new, but now this vision of a terrible situation has been formalized as an official statement addressed to NATO and our international partners. Further, we are convinced that the only real guarantee of security for Ukraine, as well as our deterrent to a future aggression by Russia against Ukraine and other states, is only Ukraine's full membership in NATO, and Ukraine rejects formers that replace membership in advance. Having behind us the bitter experience of the Budapest Memorandum, will not accept any alternatives, surrogates, or substitutes for Ukraine's full membership in NATO. This wording is also confirmed by the words of President Zelenskiy. I remind you once again that the first was the Budapest Memorandum on Nuclear Disarmament in 1994, which Russia also signed and violated. Then, in 2014, the Minsk agreements began on a ceasefire on the territory of Ukraine that Russia occupied. At that time, this was all of Crimea and parts of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions. The Russians also violated these agreements. As they say, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. We cannot trust agreements with Russia in the future, they only understand brute force. This is their mentality. Will this official invitation to NATO appear before the end of the war? I'm not sure. The chances are slim, looking at how hard they are trying not to be drawn into the war. In this situation, we are hostages of rules and laws. North Korea and Iran do not care that they are participating in a war against us, but NATO does. This is such a strange situation. We have powerful allies, they have huge resources and super modern equipment, but we have been begging for almost 3 years to get 1% of this. At the same time, North Korea and Iran are the countries that live on the brink of poverty but can easily supply 3.5 million shells and tens of thousands of combat drones to their friend Putin. Just imagine for a second that the Ukrainian army with about 1 million servicemen today would join Russian side against Europe as Putin dreams, and we would receive all these millions of shells and our western neighbors would be afraid to shoot back. How idiotic would it look? Now we are between an alliance of our dictators who are not afraid to kill civilians by the thousands and civilized countries that are afraid to let us shoot back so as not to anger Putin. For 3 years, I cannot stop being amazed at this situation. How will future historians describe this? It will be interesting to live to the end of this war and find out. A little more positive news. The European Union is committed to providing Ukraine with 1,500 million euros every month for the next year. This is money that EU will allocate from the interest of frozen Russian assets. In my opinion, this is a great decision, and keep in mind that this will not be the tax money, but the money that Russians will not earn and spend on weapons. I've not yet collected all the figures about our budget for next year, but I'll say briefly, economists promise that we will have enough funds to provide salaries to everyone who receives money from the state, plus those $30 billion for the development of the military-industrial complex from the coalition of countries that I talked about in the previous video. Fingers crossed, we can quietly say that it seems that we'll have enough money to survive the next year. This is a map of Ukraine with all the assets of the Russian Orthodox Church marked. The main religion in our country is Orthodox Christianity, and there are two main branches, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, UOC, and the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of Moscow Patriarchate, UOC-MP. The first is the official legion, and the second are representatives of the church, which are controlled directly from Moscow and donate money to Moscow. These donations from their parishioners directly finance the war against us. The Russian church in Ukraine is an enemy agent network. There is no doubt about that. We regularly see searches and arrests of all these hidden agents and Kazakhs, I still cannot understand why we have not yet arrested and exchanged them for our prisoners of war. Perhaps it's simply technically difficult to catch so many traitors at once. I'll say that this doesn't concern religion specifically. You can believe in whatever you want in Ukraine, but if you go to a church that finances the war, you're a traitor to your homeland. According to today's data, these red dots on the map represent 2,876 buildings and 3,800 land properties owned by the Russian church, and I'm sure that these properties can be used for the benefit of country, not the enemy. By the way, on the left at the top you see the arrow with the fewest red dots. This is Lviv region. Before the start of this war in 2014, there were 66 properties of the Russian church, and now there are 0. Western Ukraine has gradually begun to clean up. Let's arrest and confiscate them all already. Russians are rebuilding the drama theater in Mariupol. For me, this event is about on the same level as they did to my house. In this video from enemy propagandists, they show what they are doing on the side of that huge mass grave in the city center. Then 300 to 600 people died inside, and we cannot establish the exact number because the occupiers simply covered up the traces of this crime. As for the bombs, this is a fact because the Ukrainian army had not had aviation in this area for a long time. Below the video I will leave a link to the documentary A City Within a Building in English, which provides a detailed investigation of this terrible event, and here I will only describe my own thoughts. Since my childhood, this was my favorite place in the city. This is the first photo of my project Life, Death and Resurrection that I created in memory of Mariupol and our peaceful life before the war. I've been inside many times, knew many of the actors from the troupe and filmed their performances on stage. It was the symbol of the city, the main place in the center, which tied everything together. To see how brutally and cruelly they destroyed this place with innocent people inside is simply beyond words. I'm sure you've all seen this photo of the destroyed building with the huge sign "Children" written in Russian, and now they happily tell how beautiful the theater will be after they rebuild it. It was beautiful before you blew it up, bastards. I cannot accept the fact that it's possible to so cynically kill people, destroy a historical building, and convince everyone that it is right. It disgusts me to see it, and every time I get angry all day long when such news appear. How am I supposed to agree to peace with these creatures? How are we supposed to say, okay, enough fighting, let's spit on our dead citizens, let the Russians build a theater on the bones? Who will we be if we allow this? Good news. Yaroslava Mhuchiv, a Ukrainian track and field athlete who set a new world record for high jump this year, clearing 2 meters 10 centimeters on her first jump last summer in Paris. The previous record of 2 meters 9 centimeters stood for 36 years. Wow. And now the World Athletics Awards have named her Field Athletes of the Year. What a wonderful event. I'll say this, exactly 1 year ago I signed a contract with the New York agency Getty Images and began photographing Ukrainian sports for World News. The main idea was to show that today we're not only fighting at the front and dying from Russian missiles, but also developing as a modern society, taking part in the sports and cultural life of the civilized world. Sports and art have never been outside of politics. These are the Black Panthers who used their moment of publicity to make a statement in fight for their rights. This is the 1936 Olympics, where the Nazis clearly show their position. Yes, these are diametrically opposed things, but I mean the involvement of athletes in politics. This has always been and will always be. And I'll return to this story with Russian racer Artem Sevrukhin, who competed for Italy because of sanctions, but decided to show a Nazi salute at the awards ceremony and emphasize 4 times that he is Russian from Russia. The link to the video with his performance will be below in case you're interested. Against the background of all this, I'm glad to see that our athletes understand the importance of their position, and I see how they try to behave with dignity and show results. Under such pressure is doubly difficult. Therefore, I'm very happy for Yaroslava that her record lasts no less than the previous one. I'll see in 2060 if I live that long. This news is funny. I found the information from Z bloggers who are not very happy with the achievements of their army. I took the time to check the originals. Ladies and gentlemen, these are screenshots that I took myself. Here you see official statements from the Russian Ministry of Defense where they declare glorious victories over Ukrainian brigades number 48, 52, 76 and 132. The messages are dated July 2022 and November of this year. They indicate the numbers of the brigades and the number of destroyed equipment and soldiers. The only discrepancy is that brigades with such numbers never existed in the Ukrainian army. They just made them up for their statistics. We see this at all levels, from field commanders to Putin himself. They just lie always and everywhere. I'm not surprised after the speeches of that clown Konashenkov who declared the destruction of HIMARSes on the second floor of a building. How does he imagine a huge truck with a missile launcher on the second floor of a building? And this is a professional soldier with rank. I'll never forget this joke. For a long time, I double-checked our data because every day I read reports on how many occupiers we destroyed, and I check the data with asinters who look for visual confirmation, calculate statistics. This is all very interesting and takes amount of time. In general, I can say that our data is quite reliable. There is no point and no benefit in us lying. Yes, there are a lot of Russians. Yes, they still have thousands of tanks and guns. We will not win anything if we say that we destroyed everything and it turns otherwise. UN Infographics calculated the statistics of air raid alarms in Ukraine from February 24, 2022 to November 29 this year. In total, 51,431 air raid alarms were recorded in all regions and districts of the country. These are all acts of terror, the danger of missiles, drones, bombs, artillery. The figure is simply unreal. In capital Kyiv, we had 1,401 air raid alarms. This means that every time I received a message in my mobile app on my iPhone that said like, "Oh Hank, you can die now, grab your things and run behind two walls." Every time without fail, because I've been in Kyiv throughout the whole war. You know, when you are told 1,400 times that you are going to die now, it's perceived as a background. Death is just something in the background, white noise, or the roar of an engine. A strange feeling, and you get used to it. In general, the attitude towards death changes very much during war. When you bury another dozen of your acquaintances, it becomes just sad statistics with a minimum of emotions. When I lost loved ones, it was very difficult in 2022. After 2 years, it's just an old injury. It still hurts, but you just learn to live with it. I really hope that you are watching this video and you did not feel something like this in your life. This is something that should not have happened. As for the air raids, yesterday the Russians attacked us with 28 drones, of which we were able to neutralize 25 pieces, but 3 hit energy infrastructure facilities in 2 regions in western Ukraine. This doesn't apply to attacks on the front line, only in the rear. As for the Russian losses in November, according to the General Staff, they lost 45,720 soldiers, with a record of 2,030 per day. We destroyed 307 tanks, plus 884 artillery systems and 899 armored vehicles. The cost of this equipment is estimated at about $3 billion, but let's be honest, how much would you pay for a 70-year-old T-55 tank with these terrible homemade grills? Analyst Roman Shrike depicted the losses of the Russian army on this graph. Yes, they are growing at a wild pace. That is why Putin humiliated himself to get 12,000 Koreans. Many say that their situation is critical, but as you can see, they do not stop, and the regions of Russia continue to increase payments for signing a suicidal contract. Zelenskiy said yesterday that our losses today are 1 to 8 Russians. If we say that the Russians lost 45,720 killed and wounded in November, then we lost about 5,715 soldiers killed and wounded, and that's horrible. Any number is a lot for us. These are families who lost loved ones, children who lost their fathers, broken lives. It's too expensive in any case. In total, in November, we have a record in 3 areas: destroyed occupiers, their vehicles, and cruise missiles. In this graph, vehicles are marked in green, This doesn't include armored infantry fighting vehicles, only regular cars, golf carts and trucks. Most were destroyed with the help of FPV drones. Purple marks down cruise missiles, and this already means a significant improvement in the work of our air defense systems, for which we say thank you to all of our allies. Your missiles saved the lives of our soldiers. How many occupiers did we destroy yesterday? According to official data, I see minus 1,780 soldiers, minus 8 tanks and minus 22 armored and 60 regular vehicles, minus 23 artillery systems. These statistics always give hope that someday the idiots will end. They cannot be infinite, but we are not infinite either, and our forces are very limited. I suppose that now there is a sprint until the moment when Trump takes office and the wheels start turning. But what can we say today to a Ukrainian soldier who has been freezing in a trench for 2 months under constant shelling by Korean shells? Trump will not do his job for him. No one will do our job for us. We are somehow still holding on, and I want to believe that our diplomacy will be as steadfast as our infantry in the front. Thank you everyone who supports us, talks about us and helps us. Take care, and I hope to see you tomorrow.